Questions over why the gunman who shot dead 5 people in Plymouth had a firearms licence. Now the police watchdog investigates. Tributes to the victims, who included a 3-year-old girl, leaving the entire community in shock.
She hasn't even started her life. She's so little, and it's just, yeah, it's terrible. We're all really sad, especially for the family that are left behind as well.
The gunman had his firearms permit revoked last year after being accused of assault, but it was then given back. We'll be asking why. Also tonight, Afghans who fled their homes as the Taliban now control a majority of the land and are nearing the capital, Kabul. A powerful earthquake strikes Haiti. Latest reports say over 200 people have died and there's extensive damage. And full capacity crowds greet the opening weekend of the Premier League. Good evening. The decision to return a shotgun and a licence to the man who killed 5 people in Plymouth on Thursday is being examined by the independent police watchdog. Jake Davison's victims included his mother Maxine, a 3-year-old girl Sophie Martin and her father Lee. Davison also injured 2 other people before turning the gun on himself. Our correspondent John Kay has more.
200 miles from Westminster, the Home Secretary came to Plymouth to pay her respects. 5 people were shot dead by the gunman. The first was his mother, Maxine Davison. Then there was Lee Martin and his 3-year-old daughter, Sophie. 66-year-old Kate Shepherd from Cornwall, a talented artist. And Stephen Washington, who was 59 and killed while walking his dogs.
It's tragic beyond words, really, really tragic.
Priti Patel promised to support the community with specialist help for anyone left traumatised. She wouldn't comment on news that the gunman, Jake Davison, had his firearms licence returned to him last month, even though he posted hate-filled rants online.
Home Secretary, should Davison have had a gun? You say you want to reassure people here. A lot of people have questions about gun control.
My brain can't process it. Physically can't process that information that I was given.
Chris says his family is reeling. Not only was his auntie Maxine shot dead, but it was her son that killed her. Chris never met his cousin Jake Davison and doesn't understand what has gone so catastrophically wrong.
It's impossible. You can't plan for this. You can't see the next day or the day after or the day after. You just literally take each day as it comes. But I just know that as a family, they will come together, be there for each other, and try to understand this horrendous thing that's happened, and also the other 4 innocent people that had no part in this. I'm sorry to everybody that's going through this. It must be the worst thing in the world, and I can't even imagine to understand.
Among those grieving are the family of 3-year-old Sophie Martin and her father Lee, apparently shot at random as they walked home together.
They were definitely a pair, little and running around and, you know, eating all the ice creams.
Only last month, Sam Wright was watching the Euros with them at the Anchorage pub.
You know, he just absolutely doted on her. She was an amazing little girl. So, and he was a great dad. She hasn't even started her life. She's so little, and it's just, yeah, it's terrible.
Silence this afternoon at Plymouth Argyle's match. Concerts have been cancelled. 48 hours on, this city has so many questions. As the community grieves, detectives investigate here at the scene where the shootings began on Thursday night and at 12 other locations around this area. And it's not just members of the public who witness these attacks that are being offered counselling. So too are members of the police force. John Kay, BBC News, Plymouth.
Well, I'm joined by our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford. Daniel, there are questions then over why Davison was given back a gun.
Yes, questions from Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, but also questions within government too. And there are two issues here. First of all, why was he able to get a shotgun certificate in the first place? He was a young man. Did he really need to have a shotgun at home in a city? And particularly after there were concerns about his mental health, which there seemed to have been for many years. But then when his certificate was taken away after an allegation of assault against a teenager in September, that the shotgun and the certificate were taken away in December, but then returned in July. And in those months, he was posting all kinds of messages and videos on the internet expressing hatred for his mum, expressing an interest in the incel culture, this culture where young men resent not being able to have sex, and also showing a clear obsession with gun culture. So now the Independent Office for Police Conduct are investigating, and ultimately it'll be a matter for the inquests.
Daniel, many thanks. Daniel Sanford there. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have continued to seize yet more territory and are now in control of more regional capitals than the government, including the stronghold of resistance Mazar-e-Sharif. The Afghan president, Ashraf Ghani, addressed the nation for the first time since the Taliban advance, saying his focus was to prevent further instability. British troops have been sent to help British citizens leave, and tonight the White House announced that the US was increasing its deployment to 5,000. Our Afghanistan correspondent Sikandar Kamani reports now from the capital, Kabul.
This is the very centre of Kabul. Thousands who have fled fighting across the north now live in these miserable conditions. This family escaped the violence, but say they still don't feel safe. We're thirsty, we're hungry, we have no home. Other makeshift camps are even bigger, but this, in the heart of the city, shows how quickly the country is unravelling.
We don't want to go to the back where our sisters in our education sectors, in our government sector was so shattered that we don't want to go back to them.
Today, fighting erupted around Mazar-e-Sharif. It was one of the last major cities still under government control and had been a bastion of anti-Taliban resistance. By this evening, security forces were fleeing to the border with Uzbekistan as the insurgents took it over. Whilst in Kandahar, their spiritual home, the Taliban cemented their position with a flag-hoisting ceremony. Finally addressing the nation this morning, President Ghani didn't comment on rumours he may resign, instead simply promising to remobilise beleaguered forces. For now, for many people here in Kabul, life is continuing more or less as normal, but the Taliban are getting closer and closer to the city, and there's increasing concern that a fierce and protracted battle for control of Kabul could be imminent. The speed of the Taliban's advance has led to the US and UK together deploying more than 5,500 troops to Afghanistan to repatriate their citizens and many of their embassy staff. Many Afghan cities are now being handed over to the Taliban following local deals with the security forces. That may be the only way to avoid even more suffering in Kabul too, but would mean an end to life here as residents know it. Sikandar Kamani, BBC News, Kabul.
A major earthquake measuring 7.2 magnitude has hit Haiti in the Caribbean, killing at least 227 people. The quake is bigger than that which devastated the island in 2010. The country's Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, has said there is huge damage across the south of the country. David Willis reports.
One of the poorest countries in the world has been dealt another devastating blow. And the people of Haiti are once again dealing with the aftermath of a massive earthquake. This one centered on the country's southwestern peninsula, a less populated area than the capital Port-au-Prince, which was flattened by an earthquake 11 years ago, but stronger and closer to the surface. More than 200,000 people died in the 2010 earthquake, and Haiti's Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, said numerous lives have been lost in today's disaster.
The government decided this morning to declare a state of emergency for 1 month following this disaster. We call on the population to show solidarity with each other. Let's avoid panic in the face of this earthquake.
Only last month, Haiti was plunged into a political crisis following the assassination of its former president, Jovenel Moïse. It's also in the path of a tropical storm that's due to hit the region early next week. David Willis, BBC News, Los Angeles.
Here, the latest government coronavirus figures show that there were 29,520 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period, which means on average there were 28,715 new cases per day in the last week. Currently, 5,875 people are in hospital with coronavirus, and 93 deaths were recorded in the last 24 hours, which means an average of 88 deaths a day in the last week. Turning to vaccinations, more than 89% of adults in the UK have now had their first jab, and more than 76% have had both jabs. Nearly 600 people crossed the English Channel to the UK on Thursday. That's the highest in a single day. An Eritrean man died trying to make the journey. The Home Office says 592 migrants on 16 boats were rescued or intercepted by UK authorities. More than 10,000 people have reached the UK on small boats this year. July has been confirmed as the world's hottest month ever recorded by US government scientists. Data shows that the combined land and ocean surface temperature worldwide last month was nearly 1 degree Celsius hotter than the 20th century average. Well, James Reynolds is here to discuss this. James, first of all, just talk us through the figures.
This is a record set in July. According to the agency, it adds to the disturbing and disruptive path that climate change has set for the globe. And it's much easier to understand when we have the map, of course. It illustrates the US agency's findings. We can see there, have a look. The bits in pink are where it's got warmer. The bits in red are where records have been broken. You might have a look at the western states of the USA and Canada. That was where there was a recent heat dome. But one number recorded here in Europe does stand out. There it is, 48.8 degrees Celsius recorded this week in Sicily. That's almost halfway towards boiling point. That was caused by anticyclones rising up from Africa. If confirmed, that will be the hottest ever temperature recorded here in Europe.
And all this, James, in a week where we've had a dire warning from the UN about climate change.
Code red, according to the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. That report warned of the increasing likelihood of floods, droughts and hurricanes and so on. That will all be discussed at a climate change conference, COP26 in Glasgow in November, when leaders will have to come up with solutions and commitments. The average temperature in Glasgow at that point is going to be about 7 to 10 degrees Celsius, but the political temperature is going to be a lot hotter.
OK, James, thank you. James Reynolds there. And staying with weather and climate, a massive search and rescue operation is continuing in northern Turkey, where at least 44 people have died in flash floods. The floods swept through the Black Sea region earlier this week, causing some buildings to collapse and damaging roads, bridges and power lines. It's the second natural disaster to hit the country this month, following wildfires in the south. OK, time for all the sport now. Here is Ollie Foster at the BBC Sports Centre. Ollie.
Thank you, Reeta. We're going to start with cricket because there was a fantastic knock from the England captain Joe Root at Lord's. An unbeaten 180 has given them a first innings lead in the second test against India. Patrick Geary reports.
If this was a weekend for the return of raucous full houses, then that's not Lord's on a Saturday morning. For Englishmen in the seats and at the crease, important not to get carried away. Just top things up. Old friends Joe Root and Johnny Bairstow made serene progress on a pitch so helpful to batsmen that maybe India could have done with the extra man. just perhaps not that extra man. Despite the brilliant disguise, his Test career is probably over before it started. Unfortunately, Johnny Bairstow was deceived a little easier here. He'd scored 57, but that face showed regret at a chance missed. He'd have wanted to be there when Root went to his 22nd Test century. He's in the kind of form which puts him among the world's best.
It's another 100 for Joe Root.
The problem is bringing his team with him. Joss Buttler, then Moeen Ali, stayed a while, then left abruptly. Ishant Sharma got them both. And then Sam Curran, first ball. That was how he meant to play it. Root, of course, needed no second chances. On he went, past 150, taking England into the lead. An all-day Lord's session that peaked with the captain throwing some unusual shapes. And after a knock of such style and stamina, it even impressed his son. Briefly, at the end of it all, Joe Root walked off undefeated. Last man standing. Patrick Geary, BBC News.
It's been a good day for the Oval Invincibles. Both teams beat London Spirit to keep alive their hopes of reaching the 100 final. The men won by 2 wickets, and earlier the Invincibles women had a really comfortable victory. Opener Georgia Adams was unbeaten on 37, helping them to an 8-wicket win. Now, there were 25 goals in the Premier League today. You can watch all of them on Match of the Day after the news, but here come the results, if you want them, that is. Manchester United beat Leeds United 5-1. Bruno Fernandes scoring his first hat-trick for the club in front of 72,000 fans at Old Trafford, the biggest football crowd in the UK for 18 months. There were no draws on the first Saturday of the Premier League season. Wins for Brighton, Chelsea, Everton, Leicester, Watford and Liverpool. And finally, the British sprinter CJ Ujah says he's shocked and devastated by his provisional suspension following a positive drugs test at the Olympics. In a statement, the relay silver medalist says he would never knowingly take a banned substance and isn't a cheat. More on that story, Reeta, on the BBC Sport website.
Many thanks, Ollie. And that's all from me. Good night.